and hey, I may get featured, tweeted by this guy and that person. But again, they don't really know what that might lead to. They just have a warm, fuzzy sense that it's, if I get a viral post, then that's it. Life is simple, and I just sort of cash in. But actually, you still need to know what that attention is going to do for you. You need to direct it somewhere, and you need to convert it.
Hello, and welcome to The Right Podcast, your source for inspiration in copywriting and content marketing. Listen in as I interview experts in the field and share entrepreneurial stories along with practical content marketing and writing advice, all to impact your life and habits as a content marketer. Welcome to the show. Hello and welcome to episode 22 of The Right Podcast. I'm super excited to have Glen Long with me today. He's the managing editor of SmartBlogger, one of my all-time favorite online blogs. It's created by the amazing John Morrow. So Glen, I noticed that you also call yourself in the About page the Chief Content Monkey. Can you tell us how you came up with that?
There's a slight kind of convention within the team, a slightly tongue-in-cheek little game whereby we don't really have proper job titles. John isn't a big fan of proper job titles either. So I think Marsha, who when John first left Copyblogger, he was the associate editor over there, and he left them to set up Boost Blog Traffic, which then became SmartBlogger. He worked with Marsha Stoper, who's still one of the core members of our team, but I think she started things off. Her email signature said something like "right hand to the king." And John in his blog post signatures and his bios used to put something like John, he's the CEO of Boost Blog Traffic, but only because people won't call him His Royal Awesomeness. So Content Monkey was my self-appointed one for things to do with content, because I'm not just managing editor, but also got involved in a lot of our content creation behind the scenes. So yeah, that's where it was kind of like a tongue-in-cheek way of telling people what I did.
Nice, I like it. I can see why John did that, because at our agency, it's really hard to come up with a suitable job title. And a lot of what we do is helping each other out, so it's not like we have designated bucketed job roles. So our job titles change a lot, my staff.
Yeah, and I think because so many of us are kind of, or you get a lot of people that are like, it's a solo gig and they feel like they should have a title, and it's kind of a bit weird. I hope he's not listening to the show, but I had an email from somebody the other day whose serious job title was Chief Wizard. Okay, fine. Put a smile on my face.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, call yourself what you like. Yeah,
I like that you can do that today. You can just call yourself whatever job title. That's pretty great. You don't have
to do very much, because nobody knows what a chief wizard actually does. So you can pretty much do what you want in that job.
Yeah, that's true. So Glen, tell us a little bit about your background and your story before you came to SmartBlogger. How did you get into blogging?
Sure, it's kind of a peculiar history. I mean, my academic background is actually pretty techie. I have a computer science degree, amongst other things. And
cool.
For the first 10, 15 years of my career, I was a techie internet guy. So programming, team leadership, that kind of stuff. And in fact, I was doing that just as the internet started to go mainstream. So my first kind of proper full-time job was just as companies were thinking, maybe we should have a website. So there was this whole period of a few years where companies wanted a website but had absolutely no idea what to do with it.
Wow.
And we gave them some ideas, gave them something to spend their money. And I think that pattern often comes back. I think there was a similar thing with blogging to some extent. People want to blog, but they don't really know why they should have one or what it's going to do for them. So I did that for a while, but I was always very much into writing. I was always the one that would end up writing marketing copy if we needed it, and that kind of thing. And for many years, I harbored this like a dream, if you like, I guess, or like a passion around comedy writing. So eventually I kind of gave up my techie career and was a comedy writer for 5 years. Ended up working for the BBC and working on some online shows for them, or online kind of sketches and skits and those sorts of things.
Oh, cool.
And then there became a time when I realized that it's actually a really tough way to earn a living, especially when you're used to working as an IT consultant. So to cut an already medium sized story shorter, I kind of put that on pause, and I set up a little business to I was writing wedding speeches for people. So it was kind of a little it was my little entrepreneurial project, but it also had some writing and some comedy in there. And this is where it starts to connect with your question. I signed up for one of John's courses about blogging, his guest blogging program. I quickly realized that my business idea, although it was viable in the sense that I was making money and I had some clients, it wasn't a great blog idea, because a really good blog idea is where you keep your audience for a long time and you build your audience and they trust you and love you, and you have your growing base of fans. Of course, with a wedding speech business, the minute somebody has delivered their speech, however well or not well it went, they suddenly lose interest in.
You don't have an audience for life.
Exactly. So it's like you lead them upon a path and then suddenly they just disappear. They drop through a trapdoor and then you never see them again. So I realized it wasn't great for that kind of model of building a popular blog. But I did get on John's radar, and an email went out. They were looking for a new instructor for that course. I applied. Just to get on John's radar. One of the things he teaches is whatever you can do to get in front of an influencer, if that means buying their course and being, the annoying person that's on all the Q&A calls and making a nuisance of yourself, be that person, because it gets you on their radar. So I applied for the job knowing that maybe at least John would read my resume, and then actually got offered the job, which I wasn't expecting. And then, so I was an instructor for a bit, and then I was a part-time editor, and then managing editor. And actually, as of a couple of weeks ago, I'm moving into more of an operational role, kind of running the day-to-day of the business, while John does more writing and kind of the strategy stuff.
Wow, very cool.
So blogging is kind of like a weird mesh of my internet-y, techie interests, my writing.
That's great. I love how it just all fell into place. And it's funny because my roots at 16, I started creating businesses, and the business I created was actually a computer service repair company. But I would go around town and offer computer cleaning to anyone who just had this ancient computer and it wasn't up to speed. And I would open a few programs, speed up their computer, and they would pay me. And it was pretty good gig. So that's kind of how I got started online.
Yeah, we don't quite have the lemonade stand thing here in the UK. I mean, I'm sure we do, but it's not like a known thing. Occasionally you get kids selling biscuits and cookies and stuff like that.
Oh, interesting.
That early entrepreneurship, I think, is more established in the US than it is here. But I'm always impressed to hear that somebody was an entrepreneur at 12 years old, or whatever the age was.
I don't know how the bug bit me, but it did, and I haven't stopped.
I can imagine if you start earning, maybe you're not getting much pocket money from your parents, and all of a sudden you're doubling it, your little teenage side
tripling.
gig. It can, well, there we go. It can become very addictive. I can quite see how the bug gets caught.
Yeah, exactly. Love hearing about your journey. I think that you would have some really good advice to share. There's so many blogs created today, which I saw a statistic, and this was in 2015. So I can only imagine how many blogs are written today. But back then, 2 million blogs were written every day. And that's just crazy to think about the amount of content and blogging that's out there. And SmartBlogger has just managed to stand out through the years, which I think is amazing. You guys get hundreds of comments per post. The content is really good. I just featured one of Glen's blog openers in my upcoming Marketing Profs course. So your content's just really good.
Oh, thank you.
What are some tips that you would share with bloggers that are just starting out with their direction, their strategy? What are some things that they should be doing?
I think a lot of it comes down to knowing exactly why you're blogging. because the romantic side of blogging is that you kind of, you set up your WordPress site or, on some other platform, and you kind of spew your whatever you want to write about, whatever your passions are on that particular day, you kind of spew them out, and then Google sends you a ton of traffic the next day, and all of a sudden you're a kind of a virtual rock star. And actually, that almost never happens.
That's true.
I mean, it's the online equivalent of the person who gets spotted in the street, gets a modeling contract, and then somehow gets a kind of a Hollywood acting gig off the back of it. Yeah, it happens, but it's not something that you should. If that's your strategy, you're going to be disappointed. So it's about just trying to think, well, if I'm doing the right things with my blog, then I will be, I'll be writing on certain topics, and that will be bringing me a certain amount of attention from other people. If I'm lucky, it will be a few powerful people online. But what does that attention mean for me? What am I actually going to turn that into? Because even people who know a little bit about blogging might think, well, if I write in a certain way and I know about SEO, then I'm going to get this traffic, and hey, I may get featured, tweeted by this guy and that person. But again, they don't really know what that might lead to. They just have a warm, fuzzy sense that it's, if I get a viral post, then that's it. Life is simple, and I just sort of cash in. But actually, you still need to know what that attention is going to do for you. You need to direct it somewhere, and you need to convert it into something useful. Unless it's just a hobby, if it's something that there's a topic that you're just passionate about, and all you want to do is share that passion with other people, and you genuinely get the benefit, or you feel it's effort well spent if you're just getting to indulge that passion with other people, then that's fine. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. There's no reason that blogging should have to help you start a business or make money or anything like that. But don't just do it just hoping that something good will come out of it, not knowing what that might be, because chances are it won't.
That is great advice. I wish I had that back in 2011 when I started. I literally just blogged for the passion and with very little direction. And now some of those blogs from 5 years back are ranking in the top 3 of Google permanently. They haven't moved for months, and they are geared to the writer, which is not really our target client audience type. But I'm finally monetizing that by creating a course that'll be out this summer.
Well, that's great. And that's also another advantage of, if you do have that approach where you don't have an end point and you're just blogging, there are good things that come out of that. You become a better writer.
Very true.
You learn what you learn what topics work with people and resonate with people. And I'm a big believer in getting something out there, because I know a lot of people, I'm very much like this. All of the work happens in your head, and you try and you just try and come up with the best angle or niche or topic or whatever, and never really test it. Whereas I think it's a bit like, at some point you need to put something out there and see what comes back. It's kind of like sonar or something. You need to send a wave out there and see what bounces back. Otherwise it's just pure speculation. There's only so much deep thinking you can do. You have to put something out there. But if you can combine that with a good strong sense of exactly what you're hoping to achieve, you'll get where you want to go much faster.
That's so true. I love that. So let's talk about the actual blog writing process. And one big question for you would be, what are your thoughts on balancing SEO, the keyword, all of that side of blogging into blogging for the reader, which is so important? Do you throw out the keyword whenever you're thinking of a topic that appeals to your reader? Do you work it in somehow? Tell us how you balance that.
Well, the approach that we use at the moment, and I have to say, I'm lucky enough to work with John. He's a super, super smart guy. Has been, one of the leading thinkers in blogging for quite some time, and so I learned a lot from him in the sort of 3 years I've been working alongside him. But process we use at the moment is not really to try to do everything. We have a clear sense for a particular post what it's trying to achieve, and you can break it down into a number of sort of different end goals, but the simple ones are either it's an SEO motivated post, in which case it's not so much that you're ignoring the audience, but your audience is actually slightly different. Your audience is the people who've typed the relevant keyword into Google. They're not necessarily the exact audience that you've already attracted. And I think that is something that a nuance perhaps that people miss, because if you're only focusing on the people you've already got, it's difficult to then reach outside of that group and grow that audience. You could keep your core audience very happy, but you're probably not growing it at the rate that you could potentially grow it. So for instance, if there's a particular topic that is strategic for us in terms of SEO, then we will target that. We will look at the competition for that post, and we need to see, well, what, SEO tricks aside and backlink building and all of that, what do we actually need to do to at least deserve to be on page one of Google? Who are we fighting against for that spot? And sometimes we might look at a term and go, well, you know what, there's the top 10 hits here they're all pretty good. I mean, we'd be really hard pushed to clearly beat these without a ton of work. So maybe we should just go and pick something that's a bit of a softer target and come back to that later. So that's one thing. So that doesn't mean we totally ignore our audience, and obviously we're unlikely to target terms that that our audience are completely uninterested in. That would be slightly weird, but we perhaps would forget about our audience for it. Like for something we're working on at the moment, there's a particular term we want to rank more highly for than we do at the moment, and there are some lower level terms that it turns out we also have to rank for to sort of fill out the profile. And one of them is just something really dull. It's like, what is RSS? So we just haven't really published on that, and we kind of need to do that. So that will be an SEO motivated post. When we publish that post, we're probably not going to email our audience and go, hey guys, do you want to know what RSS is? Technology that most people have already forgotten about. We might mention it in passing in something else, but it's more about the SEO. So another goal might be like a social post. We want to do something that is going to do well socially. And, an insight that John particularly has had around that is really for something to do very well on social, it kind of has to be appealing outside of your niche. So it's the sort of thing that you'd share with your friends and family. So if you're massively into blogging, for the most part, probably your mum isn't into blogging. I mean, maybe she is, but for most people, or their friends, they might think it's a slightly geeky niche interest. So they'd share it with their blogging buddies in some Facebook group, but they probably won't share, 17 tips for doubling your opt-in form conversion rate or something like that. That's not really going to go big socially. So you need to find the aspects of your topic that have broader appeal. Like, for instance, writing is one of our big topics, and most people have got some latent feeling that maybe they say everybody's got a book in them. So if we publish something that's more about writing a best-selling book, then that would still appeal to our audience, but it's more likely to go viral socially because a much wider range of people are interested in that. Likewise, persuasion can be applied to writing, it can be applied to blogging, but broadly speaking, most of us are interested in learning, how to get other people to do what we want them to do. If you could spin at least the headline in a broader sense, then that can help you virally. And there are other audiences, but other specific one I mentioned is just sometimes your target audience is like influencers in your niche. So you want to you might write something that is way beyond the experience level of most of your actual audience, because you want to impress some influencers and build those relationships. So again, that's where you have a different audience in mind. And sometimes beginners like reading really advanced stuff because they might not understand all of it, but they feel like they're keeping abreast of the cool trending stuff. But really, you're hoping to catch the eye of somebody who would never link to a basic blogging post because it's old news, but they might link to some advanced case study or something like that. So it's like, know your audience for each post, and also know what success looks like. So we might say that success for a SEO post is, we're on page 1 in Google for this specific term within 3 months. For a social post, it might be something like, I want 500 shares across the major platforms within the first week of publication, something like that.
Wow. Glenn, you should bottle that up and put it in a post called like 20 very little talked about blogging strategies for success, because those are so good.
We're constantly trying to sort of work out this grand theory of basically of topic selection. We find with our students, we teach them writing, we teach them blogging techniques, but actually topic selection is huge. I mean, a very poorly written post with the right topic will do much better than a brilliantly written post with a poor topic. We did an analysis of the most popular posts on the Huffington Post a while back because we were teaching people how to write for that particular publication, and like the top 20, they had great headlines, but the posts themselves were pretty atrocious.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Going back to what you said about SEO, a lot of people miss that to look at the competition that's already ranking in the top 3, the top 5, or even the top 10, and to ask yourself, can you do better? And that's such an important question, because if you can't, you're not going to hit that spot. I think that's really good.
Yeah, and be honest with yourself. I mean, there are terms that we'd like to hit, like WordPress hosting or WordPress themes, but then there are there are lots of bloggers are targeting WordPress hosting, but lots of theme companies. That's a very competitive space. So the chances of us being able to compete on that, we'd have to do something truly amazing. And it's not that we couldn't, It's just maybe with that effort and money, we could do 4 amazing things in lower competition areas. So it's about that trade-off.
So what is your balance between SEO and just researching for keywords and then using that to creating posts around a keyword, as opposed to letting social drive your topics? Is there like a 50-50 balance you have with the blogs you publish?
Well, I'll be honest, we're still trying to kind of work that out, because there are other considerations as well, which is certain types of posts are actually easier to write. So to compete for a useful SEO term, you probably do have to produce something that's pretty great in some way. Again, this comes down to a kind of a model that John has, but I think it's like 4 Ds. It's like you either need to be like clearly better in design, or in, I think it's detail. So, just the depth, comprehensiveness of your material. Distinction, I think, is one of them, which is you're making original points that other people aren't making. Data, so you've got original data that you've put together, and again, that's a way, if you're publishing data that other people don't have, that's a way to be distinctive. And drama, I think, is the other one. So if there's a lot of emotion in your writing, then that can be a way to differentiate yourself. But usually, to rank for something good, or to at least to deserve to, you need to be clearly better in one of those ways. Where sometimes with a social post, you actually just need to have a good topic and a good headline. So sometimes we might publish a bunch of social posts just because they're easier to write, they're easier for us to outsource to other people. The one that's really tricky, and the one I didn't mention before but should have done is when you do write for your own audience, the other type of post you want is a bonding post that makes your existing audience stay close to you. So if you imagine there's kind of a mix where your search and your social posts are bringing, well, hopefully pleasing your current audience, but also attracting new audience to you. And then your bonding posts are keeping that audience there, because there's no point in attracting 100 new readers every week if you're losing 50 of them in the same period. You need to sort of bond with them. So sometimes you would write a post where you just don't care, particularly you're not targeting an SEO term, you're not doing anything particularly socially, you just want to reconnect with your audience.
Wow, that's a great suggestion.
Yeah, so at a very simple level, I think if you were doing like in every 3 or 4 weeks, you were doing like an SEO, like a social post, an SEO post, and a bonding post, and you kept rotating between those three, you'd probably be fine. I certainly wouldn't say you want to write one of those influencer targeted posts as often as those other three, because they're like a high risk, high return strategy. At its extreme, you might write a post targeted at one blogger. Like it would be amazing if Tim Ferriss tweeted my stuff. So you write a post that is specifically targeted to get Tim Ferriss to read it. But obviously, if it doesn't work out, you might not get much traffic from anybody else.
That's true. That is a risk.
But if it works out, it could be the biggest leap forward that your blogger's taken.
That's true too. Yeah, what you said about risk is so true with the influencer, whatever they're called, roundups, expert interviews. One that I put out was tied to an event, International Women's Day, and I put together a list of 50 women in marketing that I liked, and I had to cross compare against existing lists. And I had to make sure the bio was up to date, that I was writing for each person. And that took me about 2 months and then 3 different people to help me edit it. And that was probably one of the most intensive posts, but we got so much traffic the day it went out. It was crazy.
Yeah, they are good, those posts. I mean, there's another version that we call like an ego bait post, which is where you don't even like contact them. You're just highlighting. So it might be like, the 100 most exciting designers or whatever. And all you do is you highlight their stuff. So you don't require their input. So it's easier to highlight big stars. And then on the day of launch, you just promote it to those people and hope that some of them are flattered and tweet it. But it comes back to, the comment right at the start of the conversation, which is, let's say your wildest dreams come true and all these important people are tweeting your post and you're getting a ton of traffic. If you're not actually doing anything with that traffic, it's purely it's a vanity exercise in a way. And we had a student who had a post go massively viral on the Huffington Post, and it was a real kind of a game of catch up to try and make sure that traffic was going somewhere useful, because on publication it wasn't really. It was going to her site and then kind of dropping off. So it's get them to sign up to a list and all the normal stuff about have a freebie, get them to sign up to a list. But if you're not capturing that traffic in some way, then it's kind of wasted effort.
It's such an important reminder, and that's so simple. That's the ROI of your blogging, but you're right, it's so often missed.
Yep. Yeah.
So to wrap this up, Glenn, do you have any success stories, like some recent posts that you've put out on SmartBlogger that you just loved putting out, did really well? Anything that specifically along those lines you'd like to share?
That's a good question. So we've actually been going through a process of really like re-engineering our content process from the ground up. Just to get more, some of those things that I've been talking about, the specific goals for social and SEO, kind of baking that into our process rather than just having it in the back of our mind while we're doing it. So we've now got this, we actually produce like a content brief, whether we're writing the post ourselves or shipping it out to somebody else. We put all of this stuff up front. So we're just in the process of of implementing that. So we're starting to see some of the fruits of that. I mean, we had a really, I don't know if you know Linda Formicelli. She's
I've heard of her.
Renegade writer
Yes.
blog, and I think works quite a bit with Carol Tice from Make a Living
Oh,
Writing.
yes.
So
Know her.
she wrote for us a few weeks ago, and they posted very, very well. And that was kind of fun because we tweaked. She came to us with an idea, and then we kind of tweaked the headline. Just trying to find it now. So we had So the original headline was something like, how to. I think it was like how to write 1,000 words. Something about how the general idea was just how to be a more prolific writer. So how to write more quickly. Just like this idea that if you write for money or you're limited time, then if you can actually write physically faster, you're going to make more money or create more writing or whatever it is. So we went through various different sort of ideas for the headline, but it ended up being how to write faster, and how to write faster is actually like an SEO keyword that we discovered after the fact. So it was just one of those lucky things where we retrofitted it. So how to write faster, 10 crafty ways to hit 1,000 words per hour. And that did really, socially, that did better than ones that we'd kind of engineered to be socially popular. It was a fairly short post, but Linda writes with a lot of attitude. It really resonated with our writers, so that was fun to write or fun to work on. We then had basically there's been something we've really experimented with a few things, and they pretty much paid off. We did one about 27 hard-won lessons about writing from New York Times selling best authors. So this tapped into that one we were talking about, where that's more likely to go viral because it's kind of got a broader appeal. But that was the first one where we basically outsourced all of the research for that to a freelancer on Upwork. And so got somebody else to sort of do all the groundwork and then just sort of cherry pick the best quotes and things like that. So that was a post that I think did reasonably well for us, but somebody else was doing most of the work at relatively low cost. That was quite good. Because we're in a situation where John is beloved of the audience, and whenever John writes, he's got such a fantastic grasp on topics, and people love the way he writes. It's most of his posts do well. So the challenge is kind of when John's not writing, how do we kind of live up to that? Still keep the quality, very high. And that is a challenge. And just in terms of success stories, I guess as a success story for blogging, we are our own success story in the sense that I checked just before coming on the call. We get something like, I think we get an average of like 180 new signups every day from just SEO traffic.
Wow.
So now, and obviously not all of those kind of stick around, but that does show that once you have built up enough content that people like to draw in that search traffic, as long as you're optimized to turn that into subscribers, it really does show that blogging can be a very, very powerful strategy. Even if it doesn't pay off to start with, I think that would be like a closing thought in a way, with everything that I've said about having a clear goal and all of that. You do need, especially if you've got an SEO-centered strategy, you do need a little patience, because the posts you write in your first 6 months, they may be bringing you leads, in the next year or two. But
so
don't write off a post just because it doesn't get stellar results straight away. There may be its time may be yet to come, and there may be things that you can do to optimize that post down the line.
That is so true. I just did a podcast with Sujan Patel where we talk about the duration of content marketing. And he says, up front, he tells people that he works with, if you're not prepared to hang in there for a year, we can't work together, because that's what it takes to see results from content. So that's so true about having patience.
Yeah. I mean, one last example is I mentioned right back at the start when I spoke to John, when I first came in contact with John, I had this wedding speech business. So I kind of followed John's advice within the course, and it took kind of 3 months to fully work out actually that I was never going to build a popular blog out of this. But I think I wrote 12 posts in this engaging style. Kind of targeting some SEO terms, but not too aggressively. And so basically there was a blog that I set up. It was active for 3 months. I think the content was pretty good, but I then did nothing with it for 3 years. And still, not that I really do anything with it, still year on year, that site gets more and more traffic just from the 12 posts that I wrote 4 years ago.
Wow.
So it took something like 6 months for Google to kind of give it some credit. But yeah, there's content that I haven't touched for years, and it's still bringing in traffic that I could be, if I had time, I could potentially monetize in some way. It's always out there, so it can always continue giving you some value.
Yeah, that's amazing. For us, on average, it takes about 8 to 12 months to see a post rank. And, we'll target long tail keywords. Like one we did 2 years ago was, what does a copywriter do?
Okay.
And we did an infographic and a blog post around it. And 8 months later, it's now in the top 3 of Google, and it has stayed there for the past 2 years.
That's really cool. Yeah, there are lots of success stories like that around, and it's just, have the confidence of your convictions, and just, if you thought the post was a good idea at the time, it probably was. So just stick by it. Link. That's another thing. I'm not an SEO expert by any means, but make sure you're linking to those posts, like internally linking to those posts, so that that you're telling Google that you think they're still relevant, and it's something that deserves its attention.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the show, Glenn. I feel like this was a coaching call because it was so good.
No worries. I'm glad it was helpful. I hope it wasn't too much of a kind of a brain dump, but you asked some good questions, and it was fun to answer them. So, yeah. Thank you for inviting me on. It's been a blast.
I hope that today's episode on advanced blogging tactics with Glen Long was useful. You can go follow Glen Long on Twitter @Glen Long, and go read his content on smartblogger.com/author/Glen-Long. And I'll have that link in today's show notes. So be sure to go to expresswriters.com/episode-22 to get all of those show notes. Thank you so much for joining me on another episode of The Right Podcast. I hope that you're enjoying the show, and I'd love to know it. Hop on over to iTunes and rate and review to spread the good news about The Right Podcast. And be sure to come back for another episode. Hope to see you on the next one.